Hello. I want to continue to talk about this idea of how the pursuit of specialness is always at the cost of peace, as I shared earlier from A Course in Miracles. I wanted to share a couple of examples of how I've seen this play out very recently, actually, in my own life, specifically with respect to letting go of a structure that was no longer serving me. And it really happened to be in the setting of letting go of an office practice. And it was work that I deeply, deeply enjoyed, but for some reason it wasn't working out in terms of financially. It also, I could just feel in my heart I was not feeling the desire to continue this structure. And while this was all going on, of course, I was spending time in prayer and meditation, asking for guidance. I was guided to apply for a position, and it all worked out. And I've been doing this new position now for the last couple of months. And it really has helped me understand this concept of letting go of specialness. Because what I was doing before felt very special to me. I was in medicine, but I felt that I was fulfilling an area of medicine within the holistic field, specifically within homeopathy, mind-body medicine, yoga, etc., that was not being adequately explored by other physicians. So in some way that felt special. And of course, I was very curious about these ways of healing. So it also was feeding some intellectual curiosity I had and helped me answer questions around healing. So that was good also. So when I took on this new position, I found myself not being able to do both, and I had to make some decisions. And I decided to let go of this old structure. And I could feel a lot of resistance in me because my self-identity had formed around this old way. And this new identity involved, I was still a physician, but I wasn't doing any of the things I normally did. The structure was different, and it was pretty much very repetitive, the same sort of activity again and again and again. But an interesting thing happened as I went deeper with it. It felt like to me for a while that I was feeling resistance because I would be happier doing what I was doing before, that my lack of happiness was coming from something external to me. But having been a course student and having a real desire for healing my mind, part of me knew this wasn't true. And luckily, I really began to allow this part to guide me. And I also joined with other course students and teachers and spiritual mentors to help me along. And a beautiful lesson emerged. What I was afraid of letting go was my specialness. It wasn't so much a structure, but what the structure meant for me, for my self-image of what Seema is in this world. And when that became clear to me, it's like a veil lifted over my eyes. And I could sink deeper into the work I was doing. I could realize that my self-image was something I had created. And it wasn't what the Course or any other spiritual tradition wants to share with us, is that we are not what we do. We are not who we think we are, that we're much, much more, much beyond that. And the Course also states that nothing I do, nothing I think, nothing I create establishes my worth. My worth is a given. So that was the other idea that I was working with, that somehow my self-identity, my self-worth, my whole self-image and concept had got tied in with a certain way of being in the world, even though that way, in my heart of hearts, I knew was not working on many levels and needed to be let go of. So this idea of specialness, why is it painful? As I let myself ponder that, it's a way of deciding who I am as opposed to being shown who I truly am. And many of the greatest spiritual traditions, the greatest spiritual teachers will say the most fundamental question we can ask ourselves is, who am I? And it would seem like, oh, that's such a simple question. And most of us will start to respond to that by, of course, our name, perhaps, what we do. Often at parties, it's, so what do you do for a living? That's the second question you get. And then it usually goes into partnerships, whether it be married, single, or family or children, or then associations with who I like, who I don't like, preferences, all of that, what I'm eating, what I don't eat, and on and on and on around social ethnicity, social class, etc. And we can pretty much spend most of our lives on that dimension. However, for some of us, we go through that and we realize that there's got to be more, that it can't be just that. Because we find ourselves chasing these ideas of how I should then enhance my self-image, how I should study more, how I should accumulate more. And it doesn't matter what realm you work in. There's always this sense that what isn't enough and it needs to be enhanced somehow. And again, the Course is not saying not to do this or do this. It's not even that idea of the doing. It's always really at the level of the mind. What meaning is this for me? What meaning am I giving it? And then, am I at peace? Am I feeling a consistent level of peace, of joy, of love? And I realized that when I was honest with myself and let myself admit what it was that I was seeking from this self-image of being a healer in a certain way, and how that could never give that, because that cannot come from an external activity. It needs to be found within. Once I could see that, it was much easier to let these things go and much easier to get into my true function and much easier to ask myself some simple questions of what is my purpose? What is my function? And I found myself thinking about all of those functions that I may have assigned to myself, such as being a mother, being a daughter, being a healer, being a doctor, physician, writer, etc., etc., etc. And while all of those had a role, they felt, that's exactly what they felt like. They felt like they were roles I was playing, but I'm not just that. I'm not just any of those things. And that's when it really dawned on me that who I am cannot be contained by any of these words. It's more. And once again, it came back to this idea of special roles and special functions, how they can be limiting. Because the spirit in us wants to soar and fly and just share and extend. And it doesn't really care what that form is. It could be a mother, it could be a musician, it could be a teacher, it could be a bus driver, it could be doing the job that I'm doing, which is very repetitive, and some might even say very boring, myself included. But what it does do is when we allow our ideas of ourselves to be purified, to be re-identified, to be expanded, to be reinterpreted, I should say, something happens. At first it's a little unsteady because we're sort of like, we don't know where we are, everything we thought was this is now being different, so it feels unsettling. But if we kind of let ourselves just stay with that, and that's the point, that's where we want to have our, what the Course would say, our mighty companions to be with us, those who also are wanting that same peace, that same love, and have that deep calling, and they can join with us and support us and nurture us as we go through this path, we find ourselves coming across on the other end with a much more expansive view of ourselves, and how happiness and peace are not dependent on one specific situation, one specific relationship, one specific role, or anything. Happiness is, peace is, that's who I am. And all that stands between me and that are my own self-concepts. So I invite you to think about this. Who am I? And am I the roles that I'm playing? Or am I something more? And let yourself be taken on a journey where you just open up so that you see yourself and what you're doing and sharing in a different way. And let spirit move through you, so that, as some of the beautiful prayers talk about, this idea of becoming an instrument, that you're just this instrument where love flows through. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing. You're just this, like a wooden flute, where the harmony of the divine can just float through and just extend to all and whoever and wherever it needs to go, and you don't have to be in charge. Take care, and God bless.